Megan, do you think that an exit, however chaotic, muddled, whatever, is inevitable?
I do think an exit is inevitable, and that Greece could finally return to sustainable growth if it were to exit the Eurozone. But choreography is key. It's in absolutely nobody's best interest for Greece to have a disorderly default and exit.
From your point of view, though, you just keep kicking the idea of austerity into the long grass longer and longer. That in itself becomes a strategy.
Well, it has been a strategy for the last 2 years, and the reality here is that Greece, with the second bailout, has managed to get even more funding than the first bailout. The package needs to be renegotiated, and I believe that from the Troika side, there is a willingness to renegotiate the package on the margin. But for that, we need a workable government, and now in Greece, we don't have one. And
what chance of finding one? I mean, they're not going to make it without the marginal parties, and the marginal parties are gaining ground, and they're anti-bailout.
You're absolutely right. The chances of creating a government during this round of talks, I think, are fairly slim. Most likely we are heading for a second election, and the risk is that the second election could be equally inconclusive. That is the biggest risk.
If it's equally conclusive, then you head towards the end of June, where we're meant to be prepared to put the austerity measures in place in order to get the bailout that the country needs at the end of June to pay pensions, to pay workers.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think the take-home message is it almost doesn't matter whether Greece can put together a government in the next 2 days or if they go to a new election. No matter what, the coalition that emerges will not be stable and won't be sustainable. And I think Greece will head to elections again by the end of the year.
Now the talk is of contagion. Where do you think the worst hit will be?
We've already seen it. The worst hit will go straight to Spain, and I think that's why the Troika will be willing to play ball with whatever government arises in Greece, because the Troika has no interest in Greece defaulting and leaving the Eurozone now when Spain is right in the center of this crisis. We've seen, as drama has arisen out of Greece, bond yields in Spain have gone up and up, and it's partly also due to underlying fundamentals in Spain as well. But we have seen direct contagion from Greece to Spain, and Greece is one question, but Spain is much, much bigger and more systemically important for the Eurozone.
What's your analysis of Spain, though, Wolf?
I totally agree with Megan on this. The timing, the circumstances play in favor of Greece for the time being, because the risk, the moment in which you go for Euro exit, you break one of the biggest taboo, that the Euro is unbreakable. Once you create that kind of precedent, you don't know what is going to be next.
But don't we, at the moment, the difference is now that we have this kind of permanent financial firewall, that it will stop the spread, no?
Well, we don't have it yet, right? The EU bailout funds have to raise the money. The IMF countries have pledged money, but it isn't there yet. And so that's part of the problem is, Spain is heading straight for a bailout, but it isn't quite there yet. And if Greece were to default and exit now, Spain would need a bailout, tomorrow. And they don't have the money in place yet.
So for all these reasons, then, there's no question that Greece would be allowed to even go. There'll be a renegotiation. There'll be a softening of the line from Brussels and Berlin.
As long as we see the emergence of a government who is still committed to the core of the program, and there is a willingness to renegotiate on the side. That is a key condition coming from Brussels and specifically from Berlin.
What do you think the view looks like from Athens of the new French President Hollande? Will that change the atmosphere, do you think, in Europe? Papa Costantino, do you think the election of Monsieur Hollande will actually, President Hollande, who's going to meet Angela Merkel tomorrow night, will change the atmosphere in Europe?
Yes, I think it will, although I'm not expecting any miracles here. I think it will shift the debate in Europe, and it will be much more pro-growth and realizing the limits of austerity, but I don't expect this to happen overnight. At the end of the day, we still need to implement a program, and we've gone a very long way. I mean, remember that at the beginning of this drama, we were at a deficit of 16%. It's now down to 9%. Our competitiveness had eroded over 10 years. We've clawed back half of what we lost since we entered the Eurozone, and a lot of structural reforms have been put in place. So it's not as if Greece has not been doing the work. It's just that it's clear that we need more time, and clearly, of course, we need a government that is committed to doing this. And I hope that this is what will emerge either in the talks tomorrow or right after the next election through some kind of a coalition.
Just before we go, difference in atmosphere with President Hollande?
Yeah, I think that Eurozone leaders will talk more about a growth strategy, and that will help on the margins. But, it takes time for a growth strategy to be implemented and actually feed into the real economy, and we don't have that time.
Thank you very much indeed.